Hi, in this video I want to show you guys how I use ChatGPT as a teacher to increase my productivity and give me more time to focus on things that I truly like or give me more time to research and become a better teacher. This video is going to be more set up for beginners. I've started working with some people that are using some advanced skills, so I wanted to make a video where I actually showed you guys what I already know, and then later on down the road I'm going to make more videos. This video is going to be set up for people who have maybe never used ChatGPT, they've never seen how they can apply it to being a teacher. So some of the stuff that I'm going to show you guys is mostly like setting up outlines, writing grading rubrics, and making objectives. So let's go ahead and get into it. All right, let's start with writing some learning objectives. The first thing I like to do is ask ChatGPT what makes a good learning objective. What makes a good learning objective? Hopefully it's... And basically it's just going to come through and it's going to write out like specific, measurable. If you've been teaching for a little while, these are all very common rules of thumb to kind of keep your learning objectives inside of. The next thing I'm going to do is I want to ask it to do something based off of these points. So I might write something like rewrite these learning objectives. Objectives to match those points. And then, so I've got that, and then I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste in here some random, or like, not random, but some learning objectives that I put together that maybe aren't measurable, or they're not very relevant, or something like that, and I want them to sound more professional. So I'm going to go ahead and just push this in here, and then it's just going to basically take my learning objectives up here and just rewrite them. And they're going to be a lot more specific, measurable, all of the points up here that I might have asked for. So this is one option. If you already have like an idea of the learning objectives you want, but you want them to sound more professional, you could do this. Now I can just basically copy and paste this into a PowerPoint. I could put it into the module, let people know what, or let my students know what I'm going to be teaching, kind of help them focus in their attention on certain specific stuff. Another option would be if I just go in here and I just ask write learning objectives for a pump lecture. And basically it's going to go ahead and do almost the same thing. Most of the time if I just kind of throw in there, hey, go make up some objectives, most of the time I won't use all of them. Or it might be too broad, or it might be like too much to be taught in one lecture and I might have to split it up or something like that. But this is a great idea for if you want to, gather some ideas, do some research. This is really awesome. So I would highly recommend doing something like this. They sound very professional and you can make sure that they are matching, some of those rules of thumb or those points that I had showed you before, and writing good objectives for your students. The next thing I would highly recommend is coming up with like key points, key terms, definitions. So I might just ask ChatGPT, write a list of key terms for pumps. And it's going to go ahead and it's going to write the different types of key points that it believes are important. Most of the time, this is like 80% of all of the key points that I might want to put into a lecture. And then I can, if there's a point in here that I'm like, what the heck are they talking about? I then will go in and actually research something like one of these points and make sure that they apply to what I'm trying to teach. I really like this just because ultimately it helps me get better with the terminology. So I'm actually going through each one of these terms and definitions. And then when I go and teach about it, it makes it a heck of a lot easier. It also exposes me to some new things that maybe I haven't heard. So it starts helping my research process. So again, you just copy and paste these out into a lecture if that's the way you want to do it. You could turn it into a quiz. You could do so many things with this kind of information. And it honestly took me like 2 seconds to do. Let's go ahead and move on to writing an outline. If I wanted to write an outline for a lecture, this is probably one of the best things that I do. Ultimately, it just helps me get focused in on actually starting. I feel like the hardest part about writing a lecture is just getting started. So I'll just ask, write an outline for a lecture on pumps. And this is kind of nice. Again, it's not going to give you like this specific, I can drag and drop all this in, but it's really nice to, use it so you can start kind of classifying what you need to talk about. And it helps me find direction. Most of the time I don't even use this in any way other than I go and I start laying out my lecture with like this on this kind of like basis or with this kind of flow to it. And it just helps me get started. Most of the time I'll get something together and then I'll change it and it'll evolve after that. The other thing, along with your outline, you can ask it to make a PowerPoint or give me some slides. So make a slide or make slides for a PowerPoint, a pump lecture. And again, this is just a great idea for you to go ahead and kind of find direction. So it's gonna lay it all out for you. I like that it gives me the titles of the slides. That's like the hardest part for me to come up with, is just coming up with a title. So most of the time I just go and steal these titles and I put them in there, and again, it just helps me find direction to my lecture. Most of the time, again, it is only about 60 to 80% of what I actually need. So I have to go and, usually I'll like look into something and I'll be like, oh, positive displacement pumps. Well, that's not the direction I'm going with this class, because that's more of like a hydraulics type of pump, and I'm trying to do centrifugal pumps, like more specifically. So I'll get rid of the stuff I don't want and I'll keep the stuff I do. It gives me some ideas about like what maybe the image would be on here, what the bullet points might say. It's really nice when it gives you the bullet points, because that again, it's hard to write titles and bullet points and help me just kind of formulate my idea. Typically, when I do this, they always add in some stuff like maintenance techniques and troubleshooting common causes, but there's so much information that I would need to go over in like pump selection factors that I would never even get to that kind of stuff. So usually I just throw those away. Also, I find that these tend to be a little bit on the short side. So there's just not enough to really like to fill a whole hour or fill 2 hours. So I end up having to evolve and add more, which there's nothing wrong with it. That is my job and that's something I enjoy doing. But this just really helps me find direction. The next thing I would recommend doing is having ChatGPT write your labs. So I might just write me a lab on pump rebuilding. And this is just going to give you a great kind of template that you could go in and actually, start putting together. I do like that it gives me like an idea on time. I just, if you're like me, I'm horrible about how long it would take my students to do something. It's going to give you objectives for that actual lab. I like that it gives me my tools, because this is important to make sure that I have everything going into that lab, that I'm set up and ready to go. It gives you a pre-lab. It's going to go ahead and tell me about disassembly, inspection. I'm sure there'll be a part 3 will be putting in a new reassembly. Sorry about that. But it just gives you like a lot of information that you can go ahead and just copy and paste into that lab. And then your students have that for when they're doing the lab. There's a lot of information there. Again, you're going to want to read through this, make sure that this is actually the direction you want it to go. And most of the time it is pretty good, but you will like have to remove stuff or add stuff in. So there's that, and plus whatever is in your classroom might be different than what ChatGPT thinks you have. So if I was doing this at the end, I would go ahead and ask, write a grading rubric for this lab. This is probably the tool that I'm most impressed with, because it actually like throws it in here with the amount of points. You can go ahead and just copy and paste this whole thing into a grading rubric. I dislike writing grading rubrics. I find them really hard. And most of the time I'm more focused on writing my lecture or writing the lab itself, that the grading rubric just kind of falls off and it never gets done as nicely as I'd like to. So it's just kind of cool. You've got it and you can just drag it. Oops, not drag it. Like you can copy it and just move it into your actual grading rubric and you have it. So, and then even like the grading scale, kind of there's just a ton of information. So helping students figure out what the expectation is and what that they want or what you want out of them, this is just a great tool. Honestly, again, this is the most impressive thing that ChatGPT does on a basic beginner level. So those are probably my main tricks for, a teacher kind of getting in and getting started. So hope those helped you. If you have any questions, please leave a comment.